Hi, folks. This is Sean McLean. I'm working on kind of a mini summer project, a series that I'm calling Getting on Track. A lot of times, there's so many different pieces to study with ServiceNow or different areas that it can kind of seem a little confusing, perhaps overwhelming, or maybe just a where do I start and how do I stay on that track that I'm trying to get to. So I thought I would offer some tips and tricks along the way. Some of them aren't in ServiceNow. In fact, many of them aren't. But I thought that maybe it would be helpful to kind of talk about how to organize both the work, the cadence of perpetually studying, and some tips to kind of keep things moving. So that's what I figured this series would be about. I hope that it's helpful and I hope we get some good stuff out of it. So I figured I'd throw that stuff in there. Now, in the last session, we talked about how you can actually make a browser like Chrome or many of the others have a persona, right? And how we could build that persona to only focus on those certain tabs. In our case, those tabs are going to be our study area. So I built out the little kind of setup for the study that we'd be doing. Now, at that point, of course, I think I talked about having a guest speaker. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it, but I'm going to kind of run through the study set that we had for her just to kind of talk through some of those pieces. Now, I mentioned then that we might set up a locked-in persona of tabs for study, right? So that would be probably NowLearning, community.servicenow.com, and developer.servicenow.com. Now, if I was studying, I'd be coming back to that tab. As you can see here, they kind of be all set for me. Now, in doing that, one of the things, of course, we also need to do is get back into logging in. And I just wanted to point something out with that really quick. You can set things up to remember those pieces. And hopefully you can even get them to remember like logins and passwords. But with ServiceNow's setup, what we do now is we have two-factor authentication. And usually what that means is when you initially go to log in, you'll be sent to an email, and that email would have a sign-on verification code. And you can set that for 24 hours, which is very helpful. But I think it's kind of something to be aware of in your study process. So you kind of need to lock into the idea that, well, when I go to do my study window of, usually somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour, first I got to set up, right? I want to remove the things that will distract me. I'm writing actually an article about that and focus and helping stay focused, but that's something to keep an eye on for LinkedIn and in the Medium. But I want to remove the things that will distract me, and I want to just have just the things I want, and I want to be set up ahead of time. So that means going to this persona tab set and then doing the login work and going, okay, now we're ready to start. Now, the other thing I wanted to spend a little time on today is just talking about how when we set up our study, when we look through ServiceNow, it can sometimes seem, in particular in NowLearning, like there's so much to learn. And so the question is maybe, where do I start? And one of the things that we know are out there, and they do a really good job of putting these things right up top where we can look to them, and that's to talk about career journeys. Now, there are a million other videos, so I don't want to waste a lot of time talking about the career journeys. But if you were to click on any one of these journeys, you would find that what the system would do would be to kind of steer you through. You could start the journey and learn about not only what it is to be this role, but maybe what classes you would need to take. And some of those classes may be classes or skills that extend outside of ServiceNow. But I want to take things a little bit farther or a little beyond that. And in doing that, what I want to do is bring us right back to our home screen, which we can always get by going back to the ServiceNow icon. And I want to point out another place to get to is the recommended learning. Now, if you've never touched ServiceNow at all and you go to the recommended learning, then probably the first thing that we'll have is the welcome to ServiceNow. Now, in my case, that's already started. But again, even in the recommended learning, you're going to see lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different recommended learning. And sometimes it can be kind of that, wow, I don't know where to start. So I thought what I'd do is introduce another tip and maybe talk a little bit about, for just a minute or two, where we start, after where do we start after the on-demand course of, the basic Welcome to ServiceNow series, right? So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce another tip that I try to use to help me study. And one of those is I built a study notes template. Now, in this template, it's, in my case, a Google Doc. It's easy enough to kind of track to. But in that topic, I break things down into, notes, and then I put in study sessions. That's a way to help me keep cadence and remind me this is how many times I've studied. I'll take those notes and move them up. And I'll talk more about how to use these study notes and give some examples in another session if I get a chance. But what I wanted to do with this is use this as an opportunity to kind of talk about how to approach NowLearning's stuff, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to set up in my study notes a drawing. And in that drawing, I just want to kind of talk through a couple of big components, right? And if we think about ServiceNow in general, when I approach, the learning and what I'm going to be learning, there's the basic platform of ServiceNow, which is really, when we think about it, we'll see the notes and the talks about it. It's a platform for automation. So when we think about that layer, classes about the platform are kind of about the underlying architecture of how ServiceNow works. Now, in the larger picture, we talked about those journeys. It may be that if your journey is to be someone who uses ServiceNow for human resources, you might not need to spend a whole lot of time here on that platform, right? This may be just enough. I took the Welcome to ServiceNow, I understand how to navigate, and now I'm working in HR and I'd like to use it there. That's fine. With that in mind, then let's keep, and so I'm going to kind of put the platform. So we have the platform learning. And so if I look at NowLearning, you can actually see in NowLearning. So I want to kind of point this out too. If I'm searching for classes, I can go to that area, and you'll notice in the searches there are filters. And if I look at the filters, and we kind of scroll down here, there are products. The Now platform is that one that I was talking about. That's the base of everything. Everything operates on that. So it might be a good idea to learn some of those things. Now, that is that core bit of classes and training. And so if I look over here, I have that platform. Now, in addition to the platform, kind of more tied to that distinctive level of learning, I want to point out that there are maybe platform specialties. Things like analytics. Things like web design. I'm not going to spend a lot of time drawing lots of these, but on the platform, there are kind of subsections. When we think about analytics, we're thinking about reporting. When we think about web design, we're thinking about building front-end portals that you can use whether you're thinking about human resources or security or anything else. So even within the platform, there are those little sections that we want to kind of address. And we can actually, again, back in our fundamentals and learning window, we can kind of look to, even though it's on the platform, we could look to information about that platform and kind of see, using filters, even more specifics. But sometimes I think that understanding the kind of big picture is helpful. So in addition to the platform and those little kind of functional tools that stack on the platform, there is also and we might think of these things, as the areas that ServiceNow currently, and that list is always growing, automates. So maybe we'll call these, for lack of a better term, and there are lots of different terms for them, but I might think of them as, specialties. So these are specialties that fit into areas of business. Things like IT service management, things like human resources, things like IT business management or portfolio business management, things like security or cybersecurity. So when I think of those areas, I can translate that kind of learning. There's the platform and how to navigate and its underlying architecture. There's the platform functions like analytics or reporting and web design or those things that we can learn or specialize in. And then there's the fields that ServiceNow as a platform automates in. Now, I did a video about this a while ago and I'm rebuilding it. It's called People Do Stuff to Things. But when we look at the people do stuff to things kind of model, that's the platform. Underneath the architecture, there are core tables, and learning how those core tables work is kind of what platform learning is about. Now, if we look at it in this big picture, that might help us when we approach and look at things like in ServiceNow, these journey maps. Because when I look at those journey maps and I find something like an application developer or a system administrator, those things, as you might imagine, are typically platform things. They're administrating the platform. And once you get the hang of that, you can specialize and say, well, I'd like to administer the platform for human resources. I'd like to administrate the platform for IT or IT service management. I'd like to work on administrating the platform for, I'm working at an organization or interested in working in an organization that does healthcare. I don't see any specialties there. Maybe then I'm looking to go into learning the platform to be a developer to build specialties for that thing. So if we approach it that way, then sometimes the coursework is a little more logical or sensible. Or maybe not so much logical or sensible, but maybe not so overwhelming. Now, along those lines, the other really helpful tip I want to say for staying on track and being able to make progress through it, it's one thing to look at these journeys, but it's another in yourself to set notes that are fairly focused. Right now, because we'd assumed that we're just at ground zero, we're just going to kind of get the sense of the platform. And when I view it that way, sometimes these career journeys make more sense. So now when I look at that career journey and I can look at my classes, I can maybe only, instead of kind of looking at all of them and feeling overwhelmed, just pick one at a time. And then maybe as I start to get a better feel for it, move on. So I hope that kind of introduces two tips, right? How to navigate through NowLearning and how to stay focused and on track by understanding there's those three layers of the platform, and then the functions within the platform that would help almost any industry, and then the potential industries that you go. And when you think about that learning, you might go, well, I only want to learn a little bit about the platform because I already do a lot in this other field that I want to know. Or you might go, I'm starting from the beginning. I want to learn everything about the platform and kind of administer for any one of these different areas. So understanding that approach may help your learning a little bit, and I hope that it does. The other one that I'm going to talk about in our next session is a little more about this notes document and how we can build out that notes document and kind of use it to keep our cadence of this is where and how we build, and this is how I keep learning stuff and keep tracking on stuff. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope you'll stay tuned for the next iteration of getting on track. Thanks.